So now we're going from Angry Birds and Angry Pigs to the gentleman and his company that's responsible for millions of people using their fingers as ninja swords and chopping up copious amounts of fruit. And today, Shainiel Deo is going to talk about going from a work-for-hire model to creating your own IP and establishing a rock-solid studio. So with that, I'd like to introduce Shainiel Deo.
Thanks a lot, everyone. I'm CEO of Halfbrick. We're based in Brisbane, Australia, and we've been around for quite a while. So we were founded in 2001, and we spent a lot of that time doing work-for-hire projects for various publishers. And when we started the company, our goal was to work on original IP and create our own games, but it took us a long time to get there. I mean, we didn't make 50 games like the Rovio guys, but we certainly turned out our fair share of games over 7 years or so. And during that time, we didn't have any external funding. We were always growing organically, and over the years we've sort of grown to 45 full-time staff. And I guess what I want to share is how we finally made that transition from being a work-for-hire studio to creating our own IP. I mean, it was a hard process, and we tried a lot of things over the years, but I think we finally found a way to sort of balance doing things for other guys, but also finding the time to actually invest in our own games. So I guess this talk's probably aimed at studios that are doing work for hire that want to make that transition, but I also go through a couple of the processes we use to sort of come up with our game concepts. So I think that'll be useful for anyone that wants to create, I guess, a whole bunch of new sort of game ideas and figure out how to commercialize those. So when we started out, pretty much the sorts of games we were focusing on were the smaller handheld games, GBA, DS, PSP. And we worked with a lot of publishers over the years, from THQ to Activision to EA. And I think all up we've probably developed over 20 titles over the span of 7 years. And this is just a handful of them, but there are quite a couple of big licenses that we've worked on, particularly SpongeBob and Avatar and Marvel Superhero Squad. And all of these, games are really interesting to work on, but, they just can't really compare to what we sort of transitioned to, over the last 3 years, which is working on your own IP. And during that time, we've worked on a number of games. I guess we're best known for Fruit Ninja, but, there's other games like Monster Dash and Rascals and Age of Zombies as well. So I guess, pretty much now we're just working exclusively on original IP. When we first set about trying to make that transition, I thought it'd be like a 70-30 split. But I guess the success of Fruit Ninja has meant that we can focus exclusively on original IP. And we're pretty much just working across digital platforms now. I guess digital distribution really made it achievable for a small company like ours to actually get our games out there and reach a massive audience. So I guess original IP is always the holy grail for for most studios. Pretty much everyone that all of my friends that own dev studios, they want to get to that point someday. But it's really hard to do when your studio's working on work-for-hire projects, because there's so many demands from your development partners to get things done, and the deadlines are pretty tight, and it can be pretty brutal work. So it's very risky to try and make that transition to original IP in one go, but if you can do it, it can also be very lucrative. And I guess the most important thing is you really need a plan to help you make that transition, because if you don't have a plan when you start out, it's very easy to get diverted and go back or get sucked back into doing work-for-hire projects. So I guess what we sort of needed to do was to really lay the foundation to make that transition. When we started out, it was really haphazard, and we'd sort of grab some guys here and there and get them to work on something of our own. But sooner or later, you know, we'd have some demand or a deadline that would come up, and we'd need to grab those resources and put them back onto, you know, someone else's project. And then that thing that we're working on would go on the shelf, you know, and it'd sit there for maybe, you know, a couple of months or a couple of years before we got back to it. You know, our title Rascals, which we released at the end of last year for XBLA, that was 7 years in the making, and a lot of that was due to, you know, we'd get to work on it for a while, but then we'd have to put it away, and then we'd bring it back out and, you know, need to get back up to speed. And when you're working on something over 7 years, I guess technology changes a fair bit, so every time you get back to it, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get back to the starting grid. So, you know, these are the three key things that we sort of focused on. Definitely having goals. You know, as Peter demonstrated, having a goal like, you know, 1 billion fans really crystallizes your thoughts and, you know, makes you consider exactly what you need to do to hit that goal. Definitely team is very important. You know, we spend a lot of time building up our team, and we don't really add people to our team unless they are the right fit and, you know, will work well with us. And then also, you need a lot of support when you're working on original IP. Getting it out there and making sure that people see your game, you know, is crucial to its success. And then, you know, you obviously need a process, and you need a way to generate a lot of ideas, because I guess, you know, your first idea is probably never going to be the best, and you need a whole bunch of ideas to be able to sort of select from. And you need some kind of structure to sort of make it all happen. So, you know, goal is very important, and like I said, it provides, you know, your team with focus. So we always set goals for ourselves, and we're always striving to achieve those goals. And I think the more ambitious your goals are, you know, the more effective they are. You don't really want to. You want a goal that people are really going to buy into and really work hard to achieve. And it can't really be too arbitrary. You know, you really need a goal that means something to people, and that they want to sort of strive for. So, you know, make sure that when you are trying to come up with a goal, that you do sort of consult your team and find out what they really want to achieve as well. And it's different things for different people. So it's good to sort of, you know, to be open and transparent and try and, you know, gauge what they want. So definitely team is very important for us. You know, we spend a lot of time slowly building up our team. And actually, one of the things that we do is, you know, because we are a little bit different from a lot of studios, we tend to find that what works best for us is to hire, you know, really sharp, fresh graduates who haven't really worked elsewhere, but are really hungry and eager to sort of achieve big things, and I guess haven't been tainted by, you know, working in some of the destructive, I guess, studio environments that are around. So we tend to hire those guys, and we work with them for like 6 months or so, and just to get a feel of what they're like. And typically, you know, I think we're about 45 guys. I'd say we have 5 guys that have worked at another studio. I never worked at another studio either. I started this sort of fresh out and naive, but there's probably 5 guys that have worked elsewhere, but all the rest have come through the ranks at Halfbrick and have been with us for, you know, quite a while. So company culture is always also very strong. I think when you have a smaller team, you know, 45 seems large, but, you know, to some people, but it's still the right sort of size where you can have a, you know, tight company culture. And, you know, obviously hire talented people. You know, when I say we hire fresh graduates, we still put them through the ringer when we interview them. So we know they can do what we need them to do, and, you know, and we know they can do it well. And working with them for 6 months sort of just, you know, helps to ensure that as well. And then trust is really important, because I guess, you know, you want your team to really be invested in your company and to be doing everything they can to make it successful. So, you know, being transparent and open with your team is really important. And, you know, we've had times over the course of our history where, you know, things have been really tough for us and tight, but I've always made it my, you know, priority to let the team know where we stand at any particular time. So whether we're doing badly or we're doing really well, you know, there's nothing that we hide from our team. And, you know, I also think it's really important to be a bit different. I think, you know, a lot of innovative companies are different because they don't follow the standard path. They try a lot of things, and, you know, they're always looking to be better than they are, the day before. So, and to do that, I guess, management needs to have a different mindset too. You need to be a lot more open-minded, and as I said, trust is very important, but you need to, I guess, be a little bit more loose in how you run the company. You need to give your staff a lot of autonomy as well, and trust that they will find the right way or the right solution for whatever problems are in your path. And you need to set yourself apart. You got to make sure that you're giving something new to your fans, and that the press recognize that you are different, and you're not just just another developer. So building your brand is something that is crucial if you want to if you want to launch your games and you want them to be noticed. So I think when we started to make that transition, the first thing that we did was hire a dedicated marketing person, and it seemed overkill at the time, for a lot of people that we talked to, because we didn't have any games to actually market at that point. But I guess what we needed to do was to actually build our brand and make sure that our marketing guy, we sent him, like, we're based in Australia, so we'd send him to the US for a week or two at a time, just meeting various press, and just building those relationships that we could sort of tap into when the time was right. So and if you can do that, then when you actually do have something that you want to show people, they'll actually listen to you, because you sort of built those relationships when you didn't have any agenda, and well, no obvious agenda. Obviously you do have an agenda, but you're just hanging out with those guys and just getting to know them, and so when the time comes when you want to show them something, they'll be more receptive. And so when we did have our first few products, we started on Xbox indie games. I think you can see that. Yep. So the decision that we made was pretty much a brute force approach. We just plastered Halfbrick on the front of all our games names. So it was Halfbrick Blast Off, Halfbrick Echoes, Halfbrick Rocket Racing, and it seems pretty crude, but it was really effective for us, because the press these games are all reviewed really well, and I guess our name was associated with each game, and as we released the second and third game, it really helped to establish that Halfbrick name. And so I guess once you've got that sort of brand in place and that recognition, and you can sort of get your games out there and get them seen. The second part of our plan was definitely the process of how we're going to create games that people are going to like and enjoy. And I guess this Halfbrick Fridays brand was the brand that we initially released all of our indie games on, and the background for that is this Halfbrick Fridays program that we run is sort of like Google's 20% time. So people get to work on projects of their own with whoever they want. It's not quite 20% of their time, but the way we structured it, it's pretty much every second Friday, for any period of time. So, and the other thing is, we don't just have 4 or 5 game designers that come up with the ideas at Halfbrick. We really believe that anyone can come up with an idea. I mean, we have 45 guys. Why not tap into all of those guys and see what they can come up with? They might not have the skills to take it all the way to, to commercialize the game, but I think anyone can come up with that sort of spark of brilliance that someone else can take all the way. So the way Halfbrick Fridays work is it's done in rounds, and a round sort of consists of around 5 or 6 Fridays, and involves pitching and then prototyping and then showcasing the ideas. And the way the pitching works is everyone gets to sort of put their ideas up on a wiki before the round begins, and that can be anything. It can be because we got guys that aren't sort of designers or artists. It could be some scroll on a bit of paper that they scan and stick up on the wiki, or it could be a playable prototype that someone's put together. But once the round sort of begins, the morning of that Friday, everyone sort of gets up in front of the rest of the company and sort of pitches their ideas. And it's really, I guess, a survival of the fittest thing, because the way the teams get formed is, if enough people believe in your idea, they'll join your team, and then, you guys can start working on the game. And, a pitch can be, just a game idea, or, can be just a prototype that's mechanics, or, there's guys that create, hijack our video guy and create full-on, interactive sort of playable videos or whatever, just to showcase what they're making. And so, once you do your pitch, you need to, I guess, figure out who you need and then try and recruit those guys. And so this was the, pretty much the pitch materials for Fruit Ninja. So actually one of our designers came up with this, and where his idea came from was sort of late night TV commercials where they're trying to sell you really sharp knives. And he was watching one pretty early in the morning, and they were throwing up fruit and chopping it in the air, and that's where he got his inspiration from. So he sort of turned it into something people could understand and get behind. So, Fruit Ninja was meant to be the iPhone's premier fruit murder simulation, which I don't know if it quite turned out to be that, but, it's pretty close. And you could see from, his presentation that a lot of the elements that were in Fruit Ninja, particularly the first iteration, were pretty much in this initial pitch. So I guess once you have your team, we sort of put limitations on team size. We don't want one person working on a game on their own, because, like I said, we want the strongest ideas to survive. So you at least have to get one other person, but we also want to limit the team so we get a lot of different ideas. So we put an upper limit of 5. So at any one Halfbrick Friday round, we'll have between, say, 8 to 12 games in development being prototyped. And as soon as you have that, you get started. And like I said, the entire round sort of consists of 6 Fridays, 5 or 6 Fridays, depending on what happens. So the first Friday, the morning we'll pitch, and then we'll form into teams, get started. Then the next 4 or 5 Fridays, guys will actually work on prototypes. And then the very last Friday, we'll all get back together during the afternoon and showcase what people have come up with over a few beers. So there's no oversight. The teams just sort of get together and get to work, and they know when it's a Halfbrick Friday, and they'll just get in and get started. And productivity on those Fridays is through the roof. If I could just harness that productivity the rest of the time, it'd be awesome to see what we could do. But so when we've finished, we all get back together on the afternoon of the last Friday, and the team sort of showcase their games. So the whole idea is to have a playable prototype, and we don't really care what it's on. Like, it could be done in Flash, it could be on the iPhone, it could just be PC. But you need to have something that's playable, and you need to sort of showcase it. And then what we tend to do afterwards, I don't know how this came about. I think just one of our leads sort of came up with the idea. He made all of those himself. So, in case you can't see it, that's not real gold or anything like that. It's just bits of wood and spray paint. And people get to play the games afterwards, and they get to vote on various categories. So we have like most innovative, most fun, most game-like, most technologically advanced, best audio, most commercial, and we keep adding them over time, and it's it's pretty cool. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how much people value the actual awards, but it's really fun to sort of recognize, to give people recognition, and it's sort of a great way to end the actual round. So, coming up with those concepts is pretty cool. Like I said, we'll have 8 to 10 sort of prototypes. We might get 1 or 2 that are really good and that we feel we could take further, and then we'll have a couple of failures, but that's okay. I think you need to fail, to be able to come up with those the great concepts. And then the others will be okay. Maybe they'll need some more work. We allow people to sort of take projects through a couple of Halfbrick Fridays rounds, if they feel it needs more time. So, but with the games that are actually good, I guess they're still prototypes and they still need a lot of work to turn them into commercial sort of products. So, these days it's pretty easy for us because we're all just working on original IP, and we sort of split into 4 development teams. So the development team leads can sort of take their pick from the whole range of projects that are sort of sitting there just waiting to be turned into final games. But back in the old days when we're doing work for hire, it was a lot harder to sort of take a game and find the time to sort of commercialize it. So what we did was, we needed to make use of downtime. Anyone that's doing work for hire probably, well, particularly console, a lot of our products were geared towards the Christmas period. So we'd be working, from the start of the year, ramping up, and then trying to get into cert by June, July, August, and then ramping down, around October. And what we typically do is, November, December, we'd be sort of pitching for our next projects. And, we did that for a long time. And it worked quite well, and we really needed that November, December period to actually, put together playable prototypes so that we could convince, our publishing partners to give us another project to work on. But we found, when we were trying to create our own games beforehand by carving out teams to work on a game, it never quite worked out because at some point, they'd be sucked back into doing our work for hire projects. So when we had a whole bunch of, I think after our first round of Halfbrick Fridays, we had 3 games that we felt we could take and release. And what we decided to do, which was a little bit risky for us at the time because, I think at that stage we had 2 or 3 teams, was to just have one team working on a pitch to get new work, and we put 2 teams to work on commercializing the games. And, I don't know how you want to do it. I mean, I think you can do it with one team, if you just have one idea, but downtime was probably the best thing for us. And we sort of turned it into, I guess it was a Halfbrick fortnight, and we pretty much put aside, it was meant to initially be a fortnight, but I think it ended up being a month for 2 teams to take 2 of the ideas and commercialize them. And that was Halfbrick Blast Off and Halfbrick Echoes, which we released on indie games. So, I think if you are doing work for hire, start small, get a couple of games out there and build a revenue stream, and then over time you'll be able to make the transition. So this sort of shows you, I think you can see the dates there, but on the left, I think it's our 2007-2008 financial year, and on the right it's our 2010-2011. And the blue line is work for hire, that's our work for hire revenue, and the red line is our original IP revenue. So, 2007 is when we started putting a lot of the framework in place. 2008 is when we actually started to get the games out there. So you can see the transition on the left, obviously percentages, 100% at the top, 0 down the bottom. So I think it was around 2010 when we sort of really made that switch from our revenue coming from our original IP instead of work for hire. And if you want to look at it in terms of income, I left the income off, sorry about that. But the blue line is our work for hire revenue, and the red line is our original IP revenue. So, while it is risky, it can definitely be, a lot more lucrative over time. So, I guess just to give you an idea of some of the problems that we had before I sort of wrap up, disruptions are always a problem, particularly when you're doing work for hire. Even though we'd sort of schedule around and have 6 Halfbrick Fridays in the round, sometimes we'd have other things that had come up, and we'd have to, we'd have like a month or 2 month break in the middle of a round. And then when you want to start a round, not all the teams are always available because they have deadlines and there's projects that they need to get done on time. So sometimes you need to put off a round. So, if everything goes right, we can do 4 Halfbrick Fridays rounds in a year, but typically it ends up being, 2 to 3. And, yeah, I guess, we get so many great ideas out of that process, and we just don't have the capacity to commercialize them all. So it's a problem, but I guess it's a good problem to have. And the other thing is, the guys that actually pitch the ideas, we call them product owners. They're not always able to commercialize their own work, so it can be a little bit, disappointing for them. And typically, only projects smaller in scope can be prototyped, but that suits us well for digital distribution, and particularly iPhone in particular. And so, the advantages, morale is, super high in our studio, and everyone's really invested in the company and creating our own games. And, we just have, just a wealth of ideas that are sitting on the shelf waiting to be commercialized. And, the other thing that's really important is we have 4 distinct teams, but this allows people to work with other people that they wouldn't otherwise, and, just generally it works. So I've only got a minute left. I've gone a bit too long, so any questions? Feel free.
Great presentation. Could you talk a bit about distribution and what you did there, which is a little different, obviously, from your internal processes on developing the games?
Sure. So, I guess we wouldn't be able to do a lot of this stuff without digital distribution. And when we started, I think, XBLA and PSN was our target, but we actually, XBLA and PSN projects were a lot bigger than the scope of the games we had. So we went with indie games initially and started to get, some revenue streams there. But once you have original IP, you can sort of take them to other platforms as well. So after that, Sony approached us to take our content to PSN. And then after that, we moved our content across to iPhone. So, and I guess the revenue just sort of builds up over time, as you put your content on more platforms, and allows you to do more original work.
Yeah. So did you run into any conflict of interest, between your own IP development and the work for hire in terms of, ideas and all those things, not the work hours as such?
Sorry, so we didn't really. I mean, when you're doing work for hire, it always came first. So if we had any ideas that we sort of came up with on the work for hire side, they would end up in the games that were paid for by publishers. If ever there was a conflict in terms of time, then work for hire got the priority. But we tried to stay disciplined and focused and set aside the time that we needed to work on our own IP. There's probably 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, how do you manage internal teams? Do you let them form their own little groups, potentially cliques or whatnot, or do you encourage a lot of sort of actively encourage mixing up the teams deliberately for these Halfbrick Fridays?
So we don't try to mix it up. We let the ideas sort of attract the teams. I mean, there's guys that work well together, and you'll see a couple of teams where it's usually the same guys, and we don't try and break it up, but we just leave it up to them. If they're really passionate about the idea, then I think that's the best thing for it. Last question. No? Okay. Thank you very much.